Play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me, a man who's never far from his joystick, Bill Robertson. How are you, Commish?
I'm doing great.
Terrific. We're going to talk esports today, Billy.
We are. I'm excited.
Are you a gamer?
I am not a gamer, but I know a lot of people that are, and it's a emerging and giant industry. And our guest today is someone who I highly respect in the world of sports, has had a great career. He's president of Wisdom Gaming. He's the owner and CEO of LaCroix Sports and Entertainment, former Viking executive vice president. He's a board member for Atlanta Health, and he's also a board member for hunger-related events. And he's a great guy, Mr. Steve LaCroix. Welcome to Behind the Game.
Thank you. It's about time I showed up, right? Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here.
It's good to have you here. So tell me how somebody like yourself started out with the Peoria Rivermen, if I'm not
minor league hockey team.
Minor league hockey, and now you're president of Wisdom Gaming. Tell me how that path worked to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, Peoria is my hometown, so between undergrad and grad school, I interned with the Peoria Rivermen minor league hockey team. At the time, they're the AAA affiliate, so to speak, of the St. Louis Blues. Landed with the Indiana Pacers as an intern, selling tickets after grad school, and had a good 10-year run there, and then got recruited to Minnesota. I thought we were going to build an outdoor stadium in Blaine, and obviously that didn't happen, and thankful that it didn't, and made it through the transition to the Will family ownership and accomplished a lot of really cool stuff. So it was a great run.
Steve, for those who are unfamiliar with Wisdom Gaming, tell us a little bit about the company. How did it start? What does it do? And what's your role in the company?
Our owner and founder, basically, he couldn't get his teenage boys to go to sporting events. So he said, I'm going to start a gaming company, and Wisdom Gaming was born mostly as like an agency, and then developed into having competitive teams. We now have a venue at Mall of America. We own and operate the Minnesota High School League, MNVL, and just doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Tell me, how's the transition been for you to go from in the trenches with the Vikings on a day-to-day basis and everything goes on in the NFL, or for the Indiana Pacers, or for the Peoria Rivermen, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into this role in this esports industry, probably somewhat different?
Just a little bit, yeah. Now, I mean, there are a lot of similarities in some cases, but it's also much more different. The broadcast revenue is not there. Most esports and gaming competitions are streamed on Twitch or YouTube, which is free in almost all cases. The ticket sales aren't really a thing. So really, from Wisdom's standpoint, our revenues are driven by our white label production work that we do for the big game publishers and developers like Riot Games, Blizzard, Activision, Psyonix, and those types of companies. We're also getting into a lot more sponsorships and integrating brands into Wisdom in our venue, and so that's been part of my focus here at the start, is really try to position ourselves to be able to associate and affiliate with brands, whether they're local, regional, national, or international.
Maybe one other side question for our viewers out there that don't really understand e-gaming. In a simple paragraph or so, tell us what e-gaming is exactly.
I say there's the esports industry, and then there's the kind of the gaming culture. And so not all gaming is competitive. Esports normally refers to the competitive games when you're competing against another player or another team. The whole gaming culture, whether it's Pokemon or whatever the example is, there's a whole ecosystem of people that play those types of games and maybe don't necessarily compete against another person or another team. But it's been a really fun, energizing, dive into a new industry. I'm trying to bring some of my traditional sports experience and apply that to Wisdom Gaming and hopefully take us to another level.
Steve, we're all relatively near in age. We're probably not the target demo for a lot of esports, but coming from the Vikings, coming from a traditional team, did you have to really dive headfirst into this industry to figure out what it is, how it works?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe you were a gamer, before you started.
No. I grew up, playing Atari. It was back in my day. The great thing about this is it happened very organically as far as becoming part of, Wisdom's team, where they were one of my first client partners when I launched LaCroix Sports Entertainment last year. And so I've worked for them for almost a year, and I knew a lot of what I was getting into. I learned a lot over that year. Our son Alex works for the other esports organization here in town at Viking Lakes there, and so I knew enough to be dangerous, and I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and so I told the staff when I first got introduced to him, I said, I'm probably going to ask a lot of stupid questions, but please bear with me as I try to be a resource for you and help lead us down the road.
Esports sometimes gets the rap is that it's antisocial, it's non-athletic. Those are some of the common myths. But tell us your impression of it now being knee-deep in it.
Well, I think the pandemic really changed a lot of things for parents and those adults. Your kids playing video games is not always a bad thing. It becomes a social network. It becomes, stress reliever, whatever the example may be. You can compete, like I said before, in certain games, and so it's not just the teenagers in the basement, eating snack foods. I mean, there's a whole wide demographic of people that not just play the games but also watch and engage with it.
You spoke a little bit earlier about the business model, how you generate revenue, and most sports fans understand that a traditional team generates their revenue through ticket sales and through sponsorships and broadcast rights and merchandise sales. Can you expound a little bit more on how an esports team really generates revenue?
Yeah, mostly the competitive organizations. It's almost strictly brand partnerships, corporate sponsorships. So we have that, and then we also have the venue at Mall of America, which we're going to put on a lot of different events. There's rental opportunities, just a lot of special events that we can attract either fans and or brands to. And then we have our, that production work that I mentioned before that, in our case, that drives it for us. But we've not had any necessarily ticketed events. At the mall, we can produce the event in our broadcast studio venue and then air it in the rotunda. And we did that on behalf of Riot Games in late April. So the great thing about the mall is just the scalability of, we have our 18,000 square foot venue, and then we can go to several thousand people engaging with what we're doing in the rotunda. And we're really trying to become the hub for esports and gaming in the Midwest. There's a lot of organizations and activity on the West Coast, Texas, and then the kind of the East Coast. And so we think, the mall being really the top destination for entertainment in the U.S., 40 million visitors a year. That's just a really powerful tool, and the mall is a partner of ours, so they, are fully engaged in what we're trying to do.
Why do you think professional sports are jumping headfirst into the esports? Is it more about the revenue piece, or is it more about gaining new fans, or is it a combination of those things and other things?
I think it's a combination. It's an opportunity to potentially engage with a different demographic. The Minnesota Twins are a partner of ours, and as we sit here today, we have a gaming lounge in the left field second concourse there. I went and checked it out a few days ago, and it was a lot of energy, and the kids were kind of coming in and out. And so, from a Twins perspective, bridging the younger fan to gaming through the Twins lens is something that we've been focused on. But obviously the other organizations are buying esports teams, much like the Wolves here in the Twin Cities. They have 3 competitive teams, maybe 4 actually. And so, this is one of those that it kind of varies on the situation.
You were kind enough to give me a tour of your new facility at Mall of America last week.
Don't tell Bill.
It's incredibly impressive. I think that there are television stations in town that covet some of the facilities that you've created.
Yeah, no, it was really the Wisdom team that pulled it together, and it was Mike's vision as owner and CEO. Yeah, it's 18,000 square feet, has a retail component to it, has a first-class, I think a best-in-class broadcast studio, sound stage, and then we have team rooms where teams can compete or practice or warm up before they come out to the public areas. And then the second level is what we call High Ground, which is our bar and restaurant with 3 gaming pods and just a lot of flexibility for viewing parties, whether it's esports gaming or just traditional sports. There's a lot of ways that we can activate it on that level.
And I'm sure you like being at the Mall of America. Obviously, the traffic that comes through there on a daily basis and a yearly basis is incredible and gives you that exposure. But I also think that would also lead to garnering more sponsors to be interested in Wisdom Gaming.
Yeah, it definitely gets brands' attention, especially brands. Brands that are based here know how powerful the Mall of America is from a traffic and engagement entertainment standpoint. But it really gets the attention of brands that maybe are not based here. Mall of America has great recognition across the country, and we just really try to leverage that the best that we can. And we're early in the journey as far as bringing brands into the family here at Wisdom, and I'm super bullish on where it's going to go. And there's a lot of brands that they don't really know esports gaming. They realize they should probably be in it, and like how do we get in it? And Wisdom presents a lot of different ways to kind of onboard into what I think is the future as far as entertainment goes for the up and coming generations.
So if I'm a brand and I'm looking to invest with an esports team with Wisdom Gaming, what are some of the things that I could expect to receive? How could I use esports and Wisdom Gaming?
Yeah, there's the venue itself at the mall. There's activations that we can do around the mall. There is the very large online social digital audience for all the programming and content that we put out. We have our competitive organization called Torrent, and so that you could affiliate with that part of our business. There's the high school league, MNVL. There's brands that are associating with that. I think that's has big potential. Maybe down the road we do college events, and so we have a lot of fun plans on how to really try to expand esports and gaming in the upper Midwest and Twin Cities for sure.
Certainly the USHL might have an interest in that.
Yeah,
down the road.
absolutely.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, let's do it.
As traditional sports teams, as you worked for the Vikings and the NBA with the Pacers, they draft their players. Tell me how that works at the highest level in esports, and how you figure out who the best players are. I know there are a lot of pro athletes that are involved as well that like esports
Absolutely.
themselves, but how does that work?
It's the wild, wild west. I mean, there's no players union. There's, in theory, you could. Players sign contracts, but it's just a totally different. It's not like you're drafted. One of our best Rocket League players is a teenager that lives in Texas, so they're not all based here, and so it's so much different from that standpoint because so much of it can be done online. You don't necessarily have to have everybody in the same building, so to speak, as a team like you would with a traditional sports franchise. But it's a little bit of a wild, wild west. I mean, as far as how that goes, and there's scouting that's done. There's data and analytics as far as how you can follow certain trends in certain games and how they perform. And so it's not just kind of like, hey, he looks like he's a pretty good player. She looks like she's a really good player. There's some science behind it as well. That's not my department, by the way. So
I understand.
Keep me out of that room.
Do you have a trainer on staff to deal with carpal tunnel
It's legit. I mean, there are specialists that focus on professional gamers as far as the certain muscles that they use, and obviously like you pointed out, you could have some trouble based on what type of controller you're using, or if it's keyboard related or whatever.
There are pro gamers who make millions of dollars every year. I read yesterday about a gamer who's making $7 million a year.
Wow.
Right? Incredible amount of money. Do you think that there will be a point in the somewhat near future where these professional gamers are household names, much like we know who LeBron James is or Tom Brady?
I do. Yeah, I think so. And there's also a lot of very, I would say, powerful as far as having followers, the influencers. So they're maybe not the professional player, but they are influencers based on the content that they create around certain game titles or certain gaming communities. And so there's a lot of influencers that are making very good money as well. It's a small percentage, and that's what gets the headlines as far as so-and-so making whatever. But it's, it can be a profession, and there's now esports degrees in college and esports scholarships in college, and so the society is kind of shifting that direction because that's where the tide's going.
What does success look like for Wisdom Gaming, in your opinion?
Well, I think to become a household name in the Twin Cities is the first step. I think success, if we can fully take advantage of our location being at Mall of America, having a robust partnership family associating with Wisdom is a success, and just creating some awesome annual events that that at the end of August is going to be Wisdom Gaming's Gold Rush event that's Rocket League related, and then so it just becomes kind of on a cycle, much like you have in traditional sports. And a lot of work ahead of us, and a lot of really talented people at Wisdom, and it's been very energizing to be part of it.
Traditional teams nurture young fans. The Minnesota Twins, for instance, they do camps and they do, they sponsor youth baseball leagues, trying to grow that audience, get lifelong fans, get them young. Is Wisdom Gaming doing the same sort of thing? Does esports really try to develop followers of esports at a very young age, have them learn about the opportunities, and hopefully make them lifelong fans? Yeah,
and a lot of that is done through social media, whether it's our torrent TikTok account or whatever the example may be. So you guys know that the younger generation, it's all about what content is coming. How can you make that content very much creative and customized and relevant, and things that maybe the three of us are not following on a day in, day out basis are very, very popular out there. And so it's I think that's where that's the pipeline to it.
Is there going to be a day when we're going to see a network, an e-gaming network? I know it's on YouTube and other channels, as you earlier stated, but are we ever going to see one on its own platform on cable or DirecTV or some of those platforms?
Yeah, that's a tough question. That's a good question and a tough one to answer, just because a lot of the younger demographics are the cable cord cutters and ad blockers, and so it's all about the streaming situation. The industry is all set on, for the most part, free streaming, like I mentioned, on Twitch and YouTube. And so that would be interesting. And maybe it's more shoulder content or other type of custom content that is part of that network. But when ESPN was launched, everybody thought they were crazy. 24/7 sports. I mean, how are you going to come up with enough content to fill that commitment? And now look how many ESPNs and ESPN Plus and all those all the different sports networks that are out there. And so maybe in a different form or fashion, but I think it's just going to continue to grow over time.
There are some countries that have built venues specifically for large esports tournaments that host thousands of spectators. I don't know if this country has that yet, but I assume that in the relatively near future we'll have, maybe in different communities, much like we have stadiums and arenas in cities, we'll have esports venues. Yeah,
there are some in the U.S. actually, in Arlington, Texas, in Vegas, in the Luxor, and there's others around the country. And I know there are a lot of cities that are kind of looking at, what kind of facility can we build and drive tourism through those types of events. And I go back to the Mall of America situation, is we did not build this massive facility to try to then fill it. We have a 18,000 square feet in the mall, and they can kind of scale accordingly. But I see, over time, some type of dedicated esports, quote unquote, arena in the Twin Cities.
Let's go back a little bit here. We've talked a lot about esports and gaming and that. I would love to know from your perspective, you've had a wealth of experience, you've been in hockey, and you've been in basketball, and you've been in the NFL. Give me a couple thoughts on some of the greatest events that you have been a part of.
Well, obviously, being part of, at the time, Conseco Fieldhouse, or now it's a Gamebridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, the new arena in the late 90s, was my first foray into being part of a new build of a facility. Being part of US Bank Stadium was absolutely a huge highlight. Hosting a Super Bowl was awesome, even though we weren't in it. That was a tough couple weeks to not be in the game. We thought we're going to be the first home team to play in a Super Bowl, and now I think it's back-to-back champions have played home games. And then, just to be part of, Viking Lakes and TCO Performance Center as the new headquarters of the Vikings. Those were, highlights along the way, and just a lot of great people that were part of the journey, and lifelong friends that still keep in touch with, and some are still with their same team, or some have moved on, or some are out of the industry, and it's fun to get, even with you guys, to get with you guys that I haven't seen you, Bill, in a while. So it's just
you haven't missed much.
Yeah, I haven't missed much, but it's just like we were together a week ago.
Right.
Just kind of pick things back up, and good friends in the industry is something I'm really proud of.
Is this industry something you've always wanted to be part of, the sports industry?
Yeah. I grew up, son of a high school cross-country and track coach, and so I always wanted to be in sports, but I didn't necessarily want to go the coaching and teaching route. And so luckily, kind of the sport management degrees were starting to come along at the right time as I was graduating from Iowa, and just kind of went all in on it. Didn't know where the journey was going to go, and at that time certainly didn't think I'd be in esports and gaming. 32 years later, or whatever amount of years it is.
Yeah, I don't think 32 years ago anybody thought that they would be in esports.
Yeah. So who knows what 32 years from now, right? We'll
I
see.
would agree. How about your company, your own company that you're the owner and CEO of? Tell us what kind of projects you're working on besides the gaming piece.
Yeah, so I've had, I launched in earnest, last summer. Was doing some work before that. I've had some, corporate clients. I've had, for example, currently there's a new college basketball event in Indianapolis called the Indy Classic that involved with that. I have some other engagements, but right now, wisdom is priority number one, and just really trying to focus on getting things going in the right direction, and we're off to a good start.
I'm going to jump back to esports for a moment. You mentioned that Las Vegas as a venue. Are people able to bet now on esports the way that they bet on traditional sports? In
certain states, yes, and only with certain games. And so I do think there's a future there as far as where, in society that goes. I think more states will obviously legalizing sports betting, but also esports betting. And then it's a matter of it comes down to integrity as far as how, if you're, if there's financial stakes at risk, you need to make sure that the integrity of the competition is legitimate, and that was something very important. I know to the NFL, as that industry started to emerge, and I think things are really buttoned up from that standpoint. And traditional sports, for the most part, I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to esports and competitions, in our industry.
Like Target Field, where you were at a few days ago, and you have your Wisdom esports setup. Do you believe that all the next generations of stadiums, arenas, will have e-gaming areas?
In some form or fashion, whether that's a dedicated club, a dedicated adjacent facility, or just maybe integration into the facility itself. But I think I'd be surprised if that's not the case. The trend's already seems like it's already kind of rolling down around the tracks, and I think it's just going to continue to go that way.
Technology has changed every sport, but there's no sport that relies more on technology than esports. Does that present some challenges to you in terms of making sure that the equipment is always the latest, the greatest versions? Right? I mean, that's got to be a significant investment.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of bandwidth that we have at Wisdom Gaming Studios is significant, and so yeah, I mean, it's just if you're playing remotely against another player and your bandwidth or your internet speed is just a fraction slower, it can make a big difference. And so that's why live events, called LANs, local area networks, where they're playing on the same bandwidth or same pipeline, so to speak, are really popular, because then it's an even playing field versus having to move to a certain city because their fiber is better than somewhere else.
It's an interesting time. What would you say for our viewers out there, what do you think is the target demographic exactly? Like, what is the age point that you are looking for in esports and e-gaming?
I'm gonna dodge that one because it really comes down to which games, which game titles, and so it really varies by the game.
Sure.
And so it's there's Rocket League players that are in their 40s and love it, including our owner and CEO Mike. I mean, he's really good at Rocket League and passionate about it. And then there's like I mentioned, one of our best Rocket League players on our team is a teenager. So it's kind of everything in between, and there's a lot more females that that are in that demographic than what people give credit to.
Now to our last question, Steve. You mentioned the different games. Do you find that the players, do they focus on one particular game, or are they like utility players a little bit that can play different games?
Usually, if you're professional, it's the one game. But then we have a lot of our staff that are really good at multiple games, and so it really kind of varies as far as. But if you're going to truly become a professional, you need to focus on that one single. And it also depends. The type of equipment that you use varies by game. So if you may be good at another game that has the same type of skill set that the other one has, so it really varies.
Last question: what is your favorite game?
I'd say Rocket League. I think it's an E for everyone title. It's very intuitive. Cars playing soccer in an arena, so to speak, and it's super entertaining. And I haven't really done very well trying to pick it up yet, but maybe I'll come back a few years from now and tell you about my Rocket League skills. But it's fun.
Steve LaCroix, President of Wisdom Gaming, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to see you
Behind
guys.
the Game. Billy, always great to see you.
You too.
We want to thank Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood for sponsoring the show. If you need a good car, go see my good friend Bob Horwitz at Lexus of Wayzata, and he'll take good care of you. And we'll see all of you again next month. Thanks for watching Behind the Game.